Yeah, we're going from Imperial Beach and heading north on the Pacific Coast Highway, going up to Santa Monica, up there to the 3rd Street Promenade, place where they blocked off all the car traffic, and it's just all, you can walk around there. They got parking lots you can park in, but then you got to walk, and it's not that big, so it's not a big deal. But it's a pretty neat place. I'm going to meet Rich Samuels there at a coffee shop, and so let's go drive up the Pacific Coast Highway here and see Rich Samuels.
I went into video, I went into production, I went into all of that because my dad had a long career in the film business.
Sure.
And he was always my hero. So I always,
what are some of the things your dad worked on?
Well, my dad worked on pretty much, well, he was an executive at 20th Century Fox.
Right.
From about 1940, well, he started with Fox at 42, but he was there all the way up until 1987.
Wow.
So he pretty much, in his position, almost everything that came out in those years came
He
from
had
his
something
hands.
to do with it.
Yeah. So he was sort of in the technical area. He was responsible for the foreign versions of Fox films, acting as the intermediary between Fox and the film labs, making sure the quality of the films that were released in theaters were high quality, all sorts of things related to the release of these movies.
And so what was his name?
His name was Sid Samuels.
Sid Samuels?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
he'd be in the credits then? Of just about every
he wouldn't
film.
necessarily be the credit. I mean, there's a whole army of people that don't end up in the credits of motion pictures. He was, when he retired, he was a vice president. Most vice presidents don't end up. I mean, they're
not usually.
They're technical. I mean, yeah, not usually.
Not usually. Yeah.
And he wasn't in production. He was sort of in a post-production sort of world.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he wasn't necessarily in that, but he would work with a lot of these legendary people.
Sure.
Daryl Zanuck, who founded Fox, and his son, Richard Zanuck, who died last year. These were all people that were his contemporaries that he worked with on a day-to-day basis. So, and he had a great career. And he had a great, but more importantly, he also at the same time had a great family life. He was married to my mom for 58 years.
Oh, that's
so
nice to hear. That's so nice to hear.
And then we had family was always first. Yet he also had a successful career, and I still one of the beautiful things about Facebook, with all the criticism about Facebook, is that it's put me back in touch with a lot of people who worked for him and with him that remember him fondly and tell me stories about what he was like as a boss, you know. And that
probably helps you in networking too.
Well, you know what? It's not about. They're first of all, they're way further on in their lives than I am, and it's not about that. It's really about hearing about how he was, what kind of a person he was, which is pretty much the same kind of person he was at home. And we hadn't been in touch with any of these people. In his later years, he sort of, pulled away from all of that. So it's nice to hear, that they remember that he was someone. He was a sort of boss that cared about everyone who worked below. He had a big department, but everyone felt like he really cared about them. He wouldn't just stop and say hi. He'd stop and say hi and ask how they're doing and listen.
Sure.
That says a lot. That says a lot about leadership, and that's inspiring to me.
Sure.
So, but to make a long story short, that's one of the things that motivated me, because my father was pretty much my hero. I went into the film business and I've been making documentaries and educational, promotional films. I'm a different area than studios, but that's been what my career has been.
So you just came out with a documentary, didn't you? What was that called?
Well, that actually was a couple of years ago.
Oh, was
Hollywood Steps, and now
Hollywood
I'm about
Steps?
to work on another one about the internet, about YouTube and YouTubers. And but what I always wanted, the first thing I ever wanted to do as a 9-year-old when I started writing was be a writer, to be an author. But that sort of went by the wayside because everything else went along. And then you reach a certain point in your life where it's either now or never.
Yeah.
And this book, my life at the bottom of the food chain, which like I said is out in paperback for the first time.
Sweet, yes.
So
I wanted to see that. Is this the final draft?
That's the final one. They're all going to look like that. I made a couple of minor changes.
I knew you had a proof you had to do. So.
Yeah. So this, and actually the story of this is it began as a screenplay.
Sure.
about 10 years ago, I wrote this screenplay based on these characters, or where these characters first developed. And I love the characters, and I actually won a couple of awards for the screenplay, but I've never... It seems to me, I mean, you could shop a screenplay. There are a million people shopping a screenplay around Hollywood.
Exactly.
And they spend their lives doing that. And no one ever sees these things, and you never find the right person, or maybe you don't have the right level of quality or skill. So you could spend a lifetime doing that and never see the light of day. What's more exciting to me than getting this out there just as a sort of a goal, is getting it into people's hands and hearing about how people react to it. That's more exciting than just the actual feat of doing it, which is great too. Don't get me wrong.
Well, believe me, there's a lot to that, because like you, I've started half a dozen books, but I never made it to paper.
Right.
Never made it to paper.
Yeah. So this is now, as I said before, there's no excuse. You can get this thing. If you can create something, you can get it out there. Of course, the trick is to get people to see it. But I'm hoping, or get people to read it and people to review it and tell their friends.
Exactly.
That's the exciting aspect of this. Exactly. I mean, it's to see. It's to get people. First of all, to get the trick is really also to get people to actually review it on Amazon or any of the other sites. Because I typically, if I buy a book, 90% of the time I'm not reviewing it.
Well, most people don't.
Yeah.
It's really 1 in 100.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people, because I'm an indie author. I don't have a publisher behind me.
Right.
So I don't really have that sort of base to start with. I'm starting from scratch. But one of the, having said that, one of the inspirations I've had. Now, let me back up now. I started to talk about YouTube, and one of the reasons I got on YouTube was because it's sort of. There's such a joy of creation on YouTube and YouTubers, and it sort of brought me back to why I liked making movies when I was a kid, when I was 11 years old, and it sort of helped rekindle that.
Sure.
And ironically, as time has moved on, in 2 or 3 years that I've been doing this, not as a filmmaker, but for returning to my first love, which is writing. So it's had an effect in the opposite direction, as we were just talking about. This is the opposite direction from what most people in YouTube are trying to make movies, or trying to make a career out of it. I'm trying to, I'm using that in a different direction. So it's going on to another medium. But it's been, it's inspirational to see people pursuing their dreams and stuff. It reminds you never to stop pursuing your own dreams.
Right. Now with digital.
It makes it, now
you can afford to do it.
And that's what's exciting about it, is that, when I was a kid making movies, you made the movies, you showed them to your friends and your family, and then you put it on a shelf. A Super 8 movie, you project it on the wall of your house or whatever, and that was it.
And eventually it becomes a box full of
reels of film that
film
are unraveling in
the attic space, in Grandpa's house.
Exactly.
And 5 people have watched it.
That's exactly it. And now, if you have the talent, it always comes back to talent. You have the talent and the wherewithal to pursue it, and the wherewithal to understand how YouTube works. Even a 14-year-old can have 500,000 followers, which some do.
Right.
It's just that's what you can. The only thing that is really, it's where it should be now. It's the only thing that can stop you is your talent.
Right.
And your
the Peter principle.
Yeah. I mean,
everyone rises to the level of their own incompetence.
Right. And
that's true with anything.
There's no longer gatekeepers. If you don't, you can make your own gatekeepers, and you can decide you're gonna put obstacles in your way.
Right. But you're
you don't
your
need
own.
to. I could have gone. Now I could have shopped this around, and hey, if a publisher decided they wanted to take this thing over, I would certainly talk to them.
Sure.
But I could have taken this manuscript and shopped it around for the next 2 or 3 years on the outside chance that maybe somebody will take this brand new author and and maybe publish the book in another 2 years after that. But the beauty of this is I can get it out to people right away and get a reaction right away. And if I'm smart and clever enough and people like it enough, then word of mouth will. Right.
But when you get a book like this that doesn't have any of that supernatural stuff, you don't have any of the sex, drugs, and violence and stuff like that, and supernatural stuff that so many people seem to think is all that's going to sell.
Right.
There's a whole group of people in America, parents and what have you, they don't want anything to do with that. They just want a good book that their kid can read, and they don't have to worry about the kid getting exposed or overexposed to a bunch of stuff they don't approve of. And that's what you've got right here.
Appreciate that. I mean, also, I mean, I have a theory about, any fact that we now, as YouTubers or authors or whatever, can reach wide audiences, worldwide audiences. I mean, this isn't just on Amazon.com, it's on Amazon UK, Amazon Canada, and other sites, and all around the world. And my theory is that with 7 billion people in the world, there are probably at least 1 million people that are interested in specifically what you are doing. The trick is to find them and to get them on to watch your videos or read your book or whatever. It's to find them and find out ways of hooking up with them. Because not everybody is plugged into social media.
Sure.
And not everyone has connection to Amazon.com. But in theory, your audience is out there. It's just now we're working on the science, we meaning all of us, of how to hook up with those people. That's what I think YouTube is all about at this point in time. I mean, I'm amazed, not amazed, but I'm impressed by the fact that there's so many people on YouTube, especially kids, who in any other time would have nothing, would be isolated. They're creative, they don't quite fit in their surroundings, but they can create this thing and hook up with people all over the world and have a very rich life that would never have been possible. There are people that, some of the top YouTubers, that 10 years ago would never have had any kind of opportunity whatsoever. And that's, to me, is just, it's phenomenal. I mean, and like I said, it's the trick now, and I think this is what I think a lot of YouTubers even miss. It's not all about getting on, selling, getting people to click on your ads on your YouTube channel, but in fact, it's about the larger picture of who you are creatively and finding ways of making that work for you in your bigger creative picture. I think YouTubers may even be the wrong term, because it's like calling yourself an AT&T because you use a telephone. Or
Sure.
or a Macer because you use a Mac. I don't know. So
some people wouldn't mind being called a Mac.
Well, no, I mean, I love my Mac. I have Macs coming out of my ears, but it's a tool.
Right.
YouTube is a tool, and a wonderful tool. And I understand the YouTuber phenomenon. I've been to the last 3 conferences, and I just love the atmosphere there.
Sure.
But I think some people sell themselves short, because I think that the talents are greater than just one path. It's a bigger picture that they can pursue. Yeah, but it's not only, like, you have not only the YouTube channel, you've got your website.
Right.
And I mean, it's not simply about whether you make money. And this is what I'm concerned about, is that, parents see a kid creating some great content, but you're looking at them saying, but you're not making any money.
Right.
The fact is that if a kid, for example, has ambitions of going into the video business, this is creating, a portfolio in a way. It's showing who they are as a person. When they're ready and when they're at that level that they want to pursue that career, it shows not only that they can do it, but what kind of a person and what kind of a heart they have.
Sure.
It would give me more, if I was hiring someone, a higher level of sort of comfort, I guess, that they are the kind of person I want to work with.
Right. Yeah, because you see what they produce.
And it's so early in this. I mean, YouTube is what? I think it's only 8 years old this year.
2005, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
Yeah,
it's
young.
Incredible. Yeah, it's young.
It's a baby.
And the tool is only developing. It's like, if you look at the film business, motion pictures started as short films.
Sure.
In the kinetoscope machines.
Yeah.
Kinetoscope machines.
Right.
And they didn't know for 20 years what it would become. Motion pictures, 2-hour films, hour-and-a-half films didn't evolve till the early teens, and kinetoscopes were around the 1880s.
Right.
So it took a while, and it's still going to take a while. Even if things happen faster today, it's still going to take a while for people to develop what they can, what they can do with it. It's cool. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to get this stuff out there and finally sit down and actually do it. I'm going to tell you, And YouTube had people that I met at the YouTube conference last year were part of my beta group when I was writing this. So I was sending out chapters to have people sort of give me feedback.
Sure.
Not really feedback, because people are going to say, are going to love the opportunity to read something as it's being written. It's kind of an exciting thing.
Sure.
But it's just getting the reaction, the gut reaction, to the story that really, is kind of motivating. So YouTube is related to, it has an aspect of what motivated me to finish the book in the first place. Plus, you've read the book, viral video and sort of YouTube-ish things without saying it are part of the whole.
Well, that makes it current and relevant.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the thing about the book is that it's relevant. It's set in our time period,
Sure.
and kids like to read things they understand.
So when I originally wrote the screenplay is quite different than this.
Sure.
The idea of viral video, that didn't have any aspect in this.
Sure.
Chatting didn't exist to that extent.
Right.
On a smartphone, smartphones didn't exist when I wrote the first draft of this.
Right.
Or when I wrote the screenplay version. Because everybody has a story about bullying, and this is sort of a different perspective too.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't want to spoil the book,
Right.
but for anybody. But what I liked about it was the things are never as they appear.
Yeah.
in this story, and I like that aspect of it. You're reading it and you're thinking one way and you're thinking something's going to happen, and then it's like totally off the wall. And as far as where you think it's going,
Right.
and then you're like, what? And
That's what the fun. That is really the fun of the great fun of writing this.
Exactly.
You can't be totally off the wall. You have to. There has to be a reality to it.
Sure.
It's got to be unexpected, but not. But you don't want to insult
has to
the
be
intelligence.
plausible.
Yeah.
It has to be plausible.
Plausible, and you also, it has to make sense. And you may not expect it, but when you look at the character,
Then it makes sense.
figures that he do that, or it figures that he react that way.
Sure.
And I hope to write more sort of volumes of these
This kind of stuff.
of this book and of these characters. There's so much that can happen with.
Sure.
You take Alexander, the main character in the book, and you put him in any sort of situation that's out of the ordinary for him, and he's going to freak out one way or the other.
Sure.
It's just the kind of character he is.
Yeah,
the kind of person
he's
he
just
is.
kind of a volatile person.
Yeah, and there are, I think we've all known people like that, and I'm that way to some reason, not surprisingly. There's a little bit of me, I'll admit, in this character. That the screenplay of this thing, I wouldn't say it's more slapstick, but it's more visual.
Sure.
And it's not quite the same character development.
Right.
I mean, there's so much more. I wish I'd done this first, but on the other hand, it wouldn't have evolved the way it evolved.
Sure.
I mean, it's so. It's plugging into these characters and understanding who they are and how. I've had the opportunity over the years to do workshops with kids from everywhere from juvenile hall to. Well, actually, I'm also working with senior citizens and all kinds of characters and people from different kinds of backgrounds. And you start to realize that everyone is essentially the same. I mean, at one time I was working with kids in a juvenile institution and senior citizens separately, and it was the same issues. The two kids and the two older adults in the back of the room who just had to keep talking, and we're it was the same dynamics, human dynamics. And once you respect that about people in general, I mean, that's what I try to reflect in this. I think they're all learning that. This is all about one of the challenges when you're a kid, especially when you're around that age. I mean, and you're struggling to understand how to understand people and how to relate to people.
Sure.
That's what this is. That's what really this is about.
Sure.
And its underlying theme is just trying to be comfortable, as I say in the acknowledgements. It's about being comfortable in your own skin. And it's just like I said, I have plans for all these characters the next as these volumes go on. But
Absolutely.
I'm trying to hint at things.
Yes.
Because I know where these. I know.
You know where it can go.
Yeah, I know where it can go, and I know how it can develop. I didn't necessarily want to wrap up all the. I mean, there's a lot in this story that I don't wrap up in this volume.
Sure.
Because I think that there's, like I said, there's so much more, that can happen. And especially with some of these characters, I don't resolve everything.
Well, you can't,
You know?
and really in a book. Now, you got one thing that I really appreciated about it was that here at you got 150 pages of fairly good-sized print here, and so you're not going to run off the end of the attention span. I actually kind of see this more along the lines of say the Boxcar Children or the Nancy Drew kind of stuff, and where you've got a whole bunch of books about this size that are a whole long series of them that play a little bit off each other. You know, the Animorphs, I'm sure you've seen that one.
Sure.
There's a whole bunch of different series of books that use the same characters and doing different adventures, and they're all about this big.
The funny thing about this book is, if you really look at it, it takes place over a period of less than a week.
Oh yeah, it is. It's really no time at all. It's no time at all. But
it doesn't mean every book will be that way, but in this, I mean, there's so much more I can explore with these characters.
Oh sure.
I mean, I could write 20 books in that timeline, or I can have them grow up if I wanted to. Depends on what I wanted to do with it. But there's so much that they're at the crux of. I mean, I've known kids, that were that age that really went through a crisis at that time in their lives. They start to realize, as you were saying, they start to realize they're growing up. And they don't know how to deal with it. They don't, may not have, a role model to help them understand that sort of a thing.
And I really appreciated his parents in this book. I mean, to have parents like that that in some ways you might consider they be inattentive, but in other ways really attentive.
Well, that's reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing's perfect. They're good parents. They have issues, and this is also something that we'll play with in the future.
Sure.
I mean, he's trying to. I don't want to go into the details, but he's trying to get along with his parents. His parents are trying to get along with him as things are moving on.
Sure.
And sometimes they fail, and sometimes they succeed.
So then you've also got all the other characters and their parents.
Yeah, and we haven't even explored.
I haven't even gone down that road.
I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've been putting together notes for the next volume in this thing, and I'm just excited about where it can go, and sort of started moving on the storyline a little bit, and it's a lot of fun.